And while I'm well aware that we could probably put 4 or 5 tomato plants in there, I'm only going to put 2 plants per bed, and I'll show you why. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Tuesday, April 11th here in South Georgia, and on today's video we're going to be planting more tomatoes, this time in a raised bed garden here behind me. And we got to figure out somewhere to put these sunflower transplants that have gotten way too tall. So we need to find a home for some of these plants here. We've got 4 cherry tomato plants here, 2 different varieties. We'll talk about those in a minute. And we've got a whole tray of flowers here. We've got some sunflowers that, like I showed you earlier, have obviously gotten way too tall. We've got some marigolds there and some zinnias we need to plant. So let's start off by getting a few of these cherry tomato plants in the ground. Now, if you've been following along, a couple videos ago, we cleaned up this bed over here and that round bed on the end. We had some spinach in that one over there, had some beets and mustard in this one right here. We pulled out our drip tubing set up there, kind of flipped the vegetation that was in the bed, topped it off with some mushroom compost, and we're ready to plant. Now, these round raised beds here are about 3.5 foot in diameter, I believe. And while I'm well aware that we could probably put 4 or 5 tomato plants in there, I'm only going to put 2 plants per bed, and I'll show you why. So it all has to do with these cages right here, which we're going to use to support these cherry tomato plants, which will get pretty big, pretty heavy, pretty loaded down. And it turns out that we can fit 2 of these cages perfectly in each of those round raised beds. Now, this is not something I planned when we bought these beds, but I sure like it when a plan comes together. So we can put one of these cages right here on this side. We can put another one right here on this side. Put a tomato plant in the center of each cage. And don't you worry about that extra space right there. We're going to put something there too. Now, if you're wondering about these heavy-duty foldable tomato cages I have here, I'll put a link in the description below where you can get some of these on Amazon. Before you click the link, just know these things are pricey. They're made by an Amish company up in Pennsylvania, I believe. They're not cheap at all, but they will last you forever. I've had these for almost 10 years. They're still good as new. So you won't ever have to buy any more if you do decide to splurge and get some of these. So that looks like it's going to work really well. Those 2 tomato plants probably will intermingle a little bit, but that will be okay. Before we plant our tomatoes, we need to get these cages back out of here. Probably make me a little mark there in the center of each cage to tell me where to put my plants. So I just hooked up the water hose, get our drip system running here. You can see already some little water spots developing there. So we'll make a little hole right there. That's where one plant will go. And then we'll put another one right about here. Get these cages out of here and talk about the varieties that we're going to plant. So I've got 2 different varieties here. One variety in orange pots, one variety in green pots. I've grown this variety before. I haven't grown this variety before. So both of these are cherry tomato varieties. This one here is an orange cherry tomato called Toronjina. This one here is more of a red, kind of smoky colored cherry tomato called Edox. We grew the Toronjina last year. Best orange cherry tomato I've ever grown. Really, really productive. Like it a lot better than Sun Gold because it doesn't crack. Nice kind of citrusy flavor to it. So definitely growing more of those. We're going to plant 2 of these in one of the beds. And then this Edox variety, I don't know a whole lot about it, but when I saw the picture of them, I couldn't resist. We've had a few of our subscribers say that this is a really good variety, so I have high hopes for it. We'll see if it performs well or as well as Toronjina. Now, because we stepped these up into the 2.5-inch pots and they've been in the greenhouse a little longer, these plants are a good bit taller than the determinate plants that we planted just a week or so ago. But that's okay because we're going to plant these real deep. These things will grow somewhat indeterminately, so we're not worried about sacrificing any production by planting them too deep. So we'll make a nice kind of deep hole here. Got some good moisture down in there. Got me some Nature Safe 855. I'm going to put a little bit of that down in the furrow there, or down in the hole. Get this plant out of this 2.5-inch pot here. Starting to get a little root wrapped on me there, but it'll be okay. Break that up a little bit, stick it way down in there, and we'll cover it up. There's one. Let's get the other one in the ground. Got some nice deep hole there. Another handful of Nature Safe. If we can delicately get this out of this pot here. There we go. It's a little dry, but that'll be all right. That drip system will get it nice and moist here in a second. Those are done. Now that we got our tomato plants in the bed, we can get our cages back on here. Get it kind of centered around those plants. One there, one right there. I don't want to poke a hole through my drip tubing. That should be just right. And to fill in the rest of the space on this bed here, last time we were working in here, we had somebody comment and say, you should put some marigolds around those tomato plants. And I thought, that is a wonderful idea, because I just so happen to have some marigold plugs that need to be planted. So we've got some right here. This is a variety called White Swan. Never grown this variety before. I also have some giant marigold transplants, but I don't want to put the giants in here because they'll get too tall and maybe shade out our tomato plants a little bit. But these standard marigolds should work really well. Just going to stick a few of these in here along the edge. One right there. Probably put two in each corner of the bed. And maybe this will give us some natural pest deterrents as well. All right, I like the looks of that right there. And for those of you that are big fans of companion planting, hopefully you approve. That should be a beautiful sight once we get loaded up with little orange cherry tomatoes and loaded up with some white marigold blooms. So now we need to do the same thing with this other round raised bed, just with a different variety. So let's figure out where our cages are going to sit here. Get them somewhat centered. Make us a little hole there. Pull our cages back out for just a second. Get our Edox cherry tomatoes planted nice and deep. Way down there. A little fertilizer down in the bottom. There we go. Got that one planted about a foot deep there. Same thing over here. Some of them spinach roots are still down in there. Makes it a little hard to dig in some spots. That should be good. Put that puppy in that hole. And then do a little bit of companion planting. 2 marigolds in each corner. Although it's round and technically doesn't have any corners, you get my point. All right, all right, all right. Now that we've got that marked off our to-do list, I want to see if I can find a home for some of these zinnia transplants amongst all our raised beds. So I think the end of this pickle bed would be a good place to stick a few of these zinnia transplants over here where our irrigation sits, and we really can't have a row of anything. We put a few of these on the ends there. May have to hand water these in the beginning, but there's enough water being output there. It should feed them once they get established. So I got 2 zinnia transplants on each end of that pickle bed. Same thing over there with our slicer bed. Even stuck a few in the front of this collard and lettuce bed. And I'll probably come out here later and find a few more spots to stick some of those zinnia transplants. But at the moment, we need to find a home for these 2 tall giant sunflowers. And I think the perfect spot is going to be our arch panel trellis here that we moved a couple weeks ago. Now, I didn't intend for these sunflower transplants to get this tall and leggy. It just kind of happened. They really need to be planted about a week or so ago. Went on a little spring break trip with the kids, got back, and what do you know? I got some way too long sunflower transplants. So these are the giant sunflowers that were sent to us by Ryan over at Heavenly Hills Homestead in West Virginia, the ones that he grows competitively. These are the same ones we have listed on our website at lazydogfarm.com. These make some really big heads, and given how skinny that stem or that stalk is there, if this plant makes a really big head, it's not going to be able to support it. So that's why I think our arch panel trellis is going to work perfect for these, because hopefully we can set them up or plant them so they can kind of lean on that trellis a little bit there. Didn't really have any other plans for this trellis this spring. Not going to plant any pole beans here or anything like that, because we need to work through what we have in the freezer. So hopefully this will work out well. So I came out here earlier today and made a couple trenches or furrows along both sides of this arch panel trellis. I actually made furrows all the way to the end of the plot there, because we'll probably stick some more flowers on the other side of this trellis. I didn't hook up the tape, I just laid it in the furrow, because tomorrow I need to till this over here and get it ready to plant pumpkins, and I didn't want to be lifting my tiller over a main line, worried about getting caught up in that. So we'll hook all this up when we run main line for the rest of this plot, but I want to go ahead and get some tape down there. That way we can water these flowers with the tape once it's all hooked up. So what I'm going to try to do here is to kind of weave these flowers through this arch panel trellis, at least at the beginning. I could probably plant these real deep if I wanted to and kind of circumvent the leggy problem there, but I'm going to try just plant them at a fairly normal depth here and see if we can kind of wrap them around there a little bit. That way they can be supported until that stem thickens a little bit. We may pull a little bit of more dirt up around them like that. Hopefully that'll help. So I think I'll put these about a foot or so apart here along this trellis. We'll plant sunflowers on both sides of the arch panel trellis, or until we run out of plants. Alright, so hopefully that's a viable solution to our leggy sunflower problem there. And as I started working my way down the row, I started giving them a little bit more space. I think I put these about 2 foot apart, because I remembered Ryan also sent me some giant gourd seeds. So once these sunflowers get up and going, we may plant some of those giant gourds up on this trellis too. And then for the remainder of these 2 rows where we don't have any trellis, but we do have furrows and drip tape, I'm going to go ahead and finish out this tray of flower transplants. Probably put a bunch of zinnias in both of these rows. So I'm using a drip tape here with 6 centimeter spacing. So that's how far apart I'm going to put my zinnia plugs. We've got all different colors here we're going to be planting. I'm going to plant these pretty close. That way they can kind of lean on each other a little bit when they get taller. And with a 6-inch plant space in there, it quickly became apparent that I wasn't going to have enough flower transplants for that second row. So we'll have to figure out something else for that little 20-foot stretch, maybe a little ochre. But either way, this should be a nice little pretty spot in our gardens this spring. Hopefully those sunflower stems don't break. They thicken up a little bit and follow that arch panel trellis. And if we can get them to grow over the top of it and it just be filled with huge sunflower blooms on top, I think that's going to be pretty cool. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Don't forget to check out our affiliate links in the description below, and go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com. And if you want to see some of those beautiful, tasty Toronjina tomatoes that we planted just earlier in the raised bed garden, check out this video right here. Shows you those 3 plants we grew last year and just how loaded down with fruits they get. You'll understand why you only need a couple of those. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.